Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Deepthi Diwan, and I welcome you to this round table. The Economic Times CXO Connect series, powered by Microsoft. The theme for our ensuing discussion is CISOs Securing Business in Dynamic Times. Ladies and gentlemen, we have all seen that over the last few years, the demand for digital technology has hit the roof. Businesses are radically changing their strategies and processes by leveraging modern technology to meet the requirements of customers and support new business goals in the digital era. With a rise in remote work, risks of cyber attacks and data breaches have also increased. There has been a significant shift towards securing the endpoints for remote employees, which is more vulnerable than the corporate network. Another change for businesses is the adoption of cloud-based infrastructure. However, the implementation requires a strong security framework. With businesses operating more in the digital space now, the Chief Information Security Officers or CISOs are expected to keep up with the frequent changes. CISOs must rethink their security strategies and stay well informed about the latest cybersecurity trends to overcome the threat landscape. For instance, cloud security solutions provide better consistency, accessibility, and performance. Organizations deploy Access Gateway Service to help the workforce safely log in to corporate applications and desktops. As businesses continue to evolve, CISOs need to manage risk and improve the overall security posture while delivering positive business value. In this session, we shall focus on identifying business risks in the new normal of hybrid work, how to plan new and advanced security programs, focusing on cybersecurity trends, leveraging privacy-enhancing technologies, and the importance of regular cybersecurity training to employees. So gear up to hear from our experts as they share insights on how cybersecurity has elevated to the top of the business agenda and why the CISO's role has become more important than ever. Stay tuned for this power-packed panel. We have with us today on this panel security experts from different sectors. I extend a warm welcome to our eminent speakers. Mohammad Shadab Siddiqui, VP and CISO Hotstar. A warm welcome to Pawan Chawla, CISO and Data Protection Officer, Future Generali India Life Insurance. Warm welcome to Bijendra Mishra, CISO and GM, Alchem Laboratories Limited. We welcome Ruby Mishra, National IT Security Officer, KPMG. Welcome to James Tin, Senior Director of Global Security Solutions at F5. Sudeep Banerjee, Field CTO, APJ Zscaler. Welcome to Prasoon Srivastava. He's Lead Solution Architect, Asia Pacific and Japan at Thales. Prakash Bell, Head of Security Engineering, India and SARC, Checkpoint Software Technologies Limited. And moderating the session is Burgess Cooper, Partner, Deputy Cyber Leader, EY. Well, here's looking forward to an interesting discussion. With that, I hand over to you, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, Dipti. Good morning, and thanks for having us all out here. Thanks for such a wonderful introduction and a great segue into our main topic for today for CISOs, securing business in dynamic times. And I'd like to open the discussion with a good friendly opening notes from each of the speakers. Ruby, starting from you, your opening comments on the topic, securing business, dynamic times, what has changed, and how do you ensure going about securing such a good business? Ruby on mute.
Yes,
Ruby on mute.
Is it fine now? Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine.
So thank you so much. Thank you. So as I strongly believe that as the businesses are growing and adopting all the new and emerging technologies to accelerate their growth, so it is parallelly creating a lot of new avenue of cyber risk. So that parallelly, we also deal with a lot of data, and the way we work is, for example, the addition of new technologies or footprint or cloud adoption, dev teams that are solely focusing on the production, racing to productize the innovations. The new hire that we are bringing in, so training them, making them understand the risk of new technologies and all. So this challenges are growing, and it is as the digital footprints are increasing. So the complexity of IT systems, lack of skilled resources, this is all introducing the new risk to the technology landscapes. So I feel for CISO, it is becoming more and more difficult to manage all this risk, which is growing with the emerging technologies.
Thank you, Ruby, for your opening comments. Clearly, as businesses adapt new technologies, that's a harbinger of new risks. The new highs, which you mentioned, bringing in complexity and more difficulty for the CISOs. Thanks for your opening comments. We give it to Pawan. Pawan, you come from a different industry, more from an insurance, FS industry. What are the new risks and the new challenges that you've seen?
Many things have changed since last. Yeah, thanks, Burgess. Thanks. Many things have changed since last year. The way we used to work, the way we work today. There is a 360-degree change we can see and observe, and we have been experiencing throughout our working days every day. The important focus needs to be focused upon, which used to be the organization network and parameter, which was a traditional way of working, has changed now to home working and flexible working. The focus has entirely changed from the enterprise network to the end employee, end consumer, end individual who is working throughout their desktop. So identity, accessibility, the approach of an individual, the access to the data are the key focus areas, which has been need to be prioritized and have been prioritized in some aspects, need to be taken care going forward.
Thank you so much, Pawan. Clearly, many things have changed since last year. As you mentioned, it's a 360-degree change. Earlier, it was network and perimeter, and now your identity is the new perimeter. So thanks for your opening comments. Let me take it to Shadab. Shadab, your opening comments, you come from a very different industry, more media, more dynamic, clouds are given, more risks. How do you ensure that your tough job gets done well?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me on this panel and discussing about this topic, right? And this is close to my heart, right? For us, the biggest thing that has changed with all the things that exist is attack surface area has increased tremendously, right? That's one big piece, right? Before I elaborate on that, I just want to call out the points, right? Second, the increase earlier it was well, Pawan said, right, like it was just network and perimeter security. Now identity and access management and the threat detection and response on it has become really critical, as simple as yesterday's incident on Okta itself, right? Now the point is everything is because of the whole hybrid culture. Everyone is at home, right? Now it's not that, hey, I have secured my perimeter. It's everyone's house which you cannot secure, right? The way they have set up the Wi-Fi is to routers to everything, right? Now, identity and access management becomes really critical, that needs to be taken care of, right? Which apparently most of us are like still working in the same old fashion, which has to change a lot, right? Apart from that, digital supply chain attacks is something that wasn't common, would probably be something that we wouldn't agree that someone could go at the length of doing a supply chain attack and being patient for this long and doing things, right? So these are things that are something, how can we ensure from the next attack that happens, we are prepared for it, right? Like we have a plan, we have incident management in place that we don't have to run around to say, hey, what all is impacted and how. So managing attack surface area, identity and access management, threat and response, and understanding the attack surface area for the supply chain attack risk is something for me that's really critical and focus areas.
Thank you, Shadab, for giving your opening comments. Clearly, hybrid culture can't secure everyone's home and supply chain attacks. We've got inputs now from three leading CISOs, from Pravan, from Shadab, from Ruby. I'm not sure if Vijender has joined, but we'll wait for him. Let me now take it to James. James, you got three leading CISOs giving you their perspective. I'm sure you talk to many CISOs in many countries. Thanks for joining in from Australia. Give us a perspective. Is this echoing with the same thoughts you get internationally? Is there something else which you see in a different country or different geography? And how would you respond to these securing business in dynamic times? What have you seen from different CISOs and what have you heard? And do you have a case study how you've helped them?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here. So we've had customers with the start of COVID, they can't go to the shop, they can't go to the stores anymore. So they've had to transition to online. So it's been the biggest digital transformation. And like what Shadab mentioned, when you go and do things more online using identity and logging into applications, you're exposing a lot more business logic to the attackers than you may have been exposing before. And you either shut your shop down or you embrace the internet. And so this embracing of the internet has been a huge challenge for many organizations. Often we get called in after something has happened. Either accounts get locked out, money stolen, fraudulent transactions. And unfortunately, the traditional application security controls aren't able to identify these newer attacks. And what we've seen is the attackers are leveraging machine learning and artificial intelligence to break through the enterprise perimeter. And so leveraging humans to respond is on the back foot. The attackers are leveraging ML, and so the defenders also need to leverage ML and AI. And that's what I'm seeing a lot in the financial services, in the e-commerce space, anyone that needs to ensure that their presence is online and available. And we've even seen multi-factor authentication being bypassed. So there's a whole bunch of things that make the user experience poor, but there's an upside that in using machine learning and artificial intelligence can improve the security, but also improve user experience. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Clearly, either shut your shop down or move on the internet. Attackers are using AI and ML, and so should the defenders. Do you want to give a case study? You said normally people call you after things have gone wrong without naming the client. How have you actually helped a client secure themselves? And were they able to salvage their dignity back, or was it all lost on the rain?
So I'm thinking of one particular financial services organization. They're in Australia. They're a relatively large bank. And the attack that they get happens every Christmas. So 6 weeks leading up to Christmas, they have a number of accounts being compromised, but the attacker doesn't steal all the money in the accounts. What the attacker is doing is looking for ways to monetize. So they're using frequent flyer points that they may have accrued in the credit card platform, and then using that to buy gift cards, using it at the local bottle shop or the local supermarket. And the numbers aren't very high. So when they go to law enforcement will say, well, these are numbers so small, it's not worthwhile. But this particular bank, they've got bot management services, they've got application security, they've got anti-fraud capabilities, and all of these platforms are being bypassed with this one particular attacker. So they think that this attacker is a customer of theirs, because once they lock down one front end for internet banking, they might have other ways for login, and those logins are actually to the same database. So they're just iterating through the username and passwords and identifying these accounts. So it's causing a huge problem for the defenders, so much so that they've had to go to a third-party SOC to manage the environment for them. And they have to grow their security team by 3 times to try and handle the load of this one particular individual.
Thank you, James, for sharing an interesting case study. Don't get the data out, but just get the frequent flyer points and get them in slow value, so the authorities don't do that, and run the company by 3 times from security perspective. Only one last question. You mentioned banking and economic services giving more of e-commerce. But we're also seeing, and you got Shadab and you got different team members here, also talking about different industries, media, manufacturing, healthcare, retail. Is this still banking ruling the roost of attacks, or are attacks also happening on different industries now?
We're seeing it on, well, I guess, we protect organizations that need to stay online. So whether that's they generate revenue online, or they have a government facility where the citizens need to log in and do government lodge tax returns and things like that. Anyone that has a reputation to protect or needs to have an application online, they're getting hit. And a lot of the times the attackers are going straight through, and the traditional security controls can't identify them. And it's only after fraudulent transactions have occurred does the organization know that they have to go and do something about it. And so it's across many different verticals, not just financial services.
Thanks, James. Anybody, as you rightly say, anybody who has a reputation to protect. So thank you for your comments. Let's get on the next line of questions and discussion points. We agree that changes have happened. There have happened multiple ways, as CISOs have mentioned. The environment has changed. We agree there's a problem. Shraddha, back to you. Data is the new oil. Trust is the new currency. Because things have changed, are we still adapting the old ways of protecting? Or what are new things that you see should be done, are being done by CISOs, which you can share with other CISOs in the industry saying, hey, gone are the days of protecting the old ancient fort and more perspective, utilize these new things. Could be zero trust, could be segmentation, could be anything else. So how are we adopting, given the changes here and present, what new technologies, TTPs are we utilizing?
Sure. So first thing that I would like to point out, right, like we need to move beyond awareness, right? Like the one thing that's been done is like those trainings where employees have to sit through certain program and go through it and then forget about it, right? It's time now we need to evolve from that and ensure that like they understand as a part of something of how can they get addicted to any social media app, to anything on their phone right now. How can they understand what are the risks, right? Like as an example, now everyone is working from home, right? Now almost all sites have all the big companies trackers, right? Now while they are not on VPN, they go to a million sites, right? And when they are on VPN, they go to a million sites. Now people are able to analyze and figure out this is the same Shadab who's been going all around this place, and he also works here, right? Versus earlier when you were in office, your proxies and everything could strip out a lot of metadata, but now it's all open, right? So awareness is something, guys, how can it impact you and how can it impact my business is something that needs to be given in a far more better manner rather than the traditional way of doing things, right? That's one piece. The other thing is we have to become more, instead I would say, instead of just being how do we deploy X more tools to become more secure versus how can we fix, rather than fixing the symptom, can we go ahead and say, can we fix the root cause itself? What I mean by that, right? Now with hybrid, everyone has access to a lot of data. You have to lower your bar of in terms of how people are accessing from PII data to business critical data, depending on which sector, industry, and what folks and what level, all of that, right? Now I see a lot of people saying, hey, you know what, I want to deploy DLP. I'm like, good. But now, okay, the rules are giving a lot of false positive. Now we need a team to tweak them. Then we need a team to monitor all the alerts that are false positive and all of that. I'm like, hey, can we just go to the root cause? Instead of fixing the system, we say, hey, no one is going to have access to PII data and all the places it exists. Like I have done in at least 2 different organizations this, right? Where I said, all your dashboards will work the way it is. Now you have format preserving encryption to whatever, right? Your PII data is masked in certain manner, right? And let's say Pawan needs it, I'm just taking name as an example, right? Or Burgess needs it, right? He needs to go through approval process where everything is tracked. Now, the point is, now I don't have to worry about how the data exists on Burgess' laptop or whatever gets stolen, or is this employer good employer, bad employer, all of that. So if we can just go a level down, go to the root cause of fixing things. That would be very helpful versus saying, hey, we're going to deploy this solution, that's going to help us with this. If we could be very clear, what is our goal, right? Where do you want to get to? And then we figure out, hey, what's the right solution we could deploy? That would be far more better approach other than, hey, I have a problem, here's a solution. Right? Like this, I have a cough, have a cough syrup. No, why do you have cough, right? Whether it's a lung infection, it's a throat infection, it's some allergy, you don't know. A cough syrup won't help. So I think that would be a better way if CISOs could switch in terms of how and what needs to be done. Yeah.
Thanks, Shadab. Move from beyond awareness. How do we not deploy more tools, but how do we don't address the symptoms, but actually the root cause? And how does it affect me and my business? Ruby, from your perspective, you got Shadab's perspective on move beyond awareness. With the new DP Act coming into India, with privacy being more important, with not just personal data, but business data coming inside, you as a custodian of lots of critical information, how are you transforming your business to ensure you remain secure? It's important on your shoulders to ensure our company's data is protected.
Yeah, indeed, it's a very, very sensitive topic. And data security, I believe it's not a sort of project or talking about the tool, as Shadab said rightly. It is an entire program. So in our firm also, we had this data governance program that we said, which talked about a lot of approach, which will help us to protect the data or secure the data. While we also have to parallelly understand the business need of the firm. We cannot always talk about the restrictive thing, or we can just control everything in lock and key and no access. So I think parallelly these things has to be driven. And that was the first thing what we did was identifying all the data points in the firm, which was for both structured and unstructured data. So when it is a data point, whether the data is sitting in your application database, on your laptop or shared drive, or even with your partners and vendors, because we deal a lot with vendor things. So I think that is also very, very important for us to identify all data points. That was the first approach that we took. We use a lot of tools to manage that, like data discoveries and other tools that we have. We've also got a lot of things automated in our firm for that. After identifying all the data points, which talked about PII, critical data and all, that was done. And the second approach that we took was, which was a paramount, was to have a core measures or layers of security controls that we have to put in. So the first and foremost was establishing a process of least privilege and providing access only on need to know basis. So that was consolidating all the data which was scattered in the firm, and then putting up a control and providing access only on need to basis was the first thing that we tried doing it. And then overall that building up authentication and authorization measures, bringing in the PAM and other security tools, which could help us to make this identity and access management structure strengthen in the firm. The other approach that we took was obviously because today we cannot restrict the controls in the firm in terms of, we are blocking all the sites. People may not go and view their social media or LinkedIn sites and all. But parallelly, we also have a risk that somebody who is not aware of the controls and all, they may go and upload certain data and all. So putting up the restrictive control was also very, very important. So we had to look where we can restrict, where people cannot use the data, or without knowing the requirements, they can, just move the data outside the firm. So for that, we had certain controls in terms of, yes, DLP is there, but apart from DLP, putting up the right policies is something which is just bringing in the tool doesn't help, but bringing in the right policies and then putting up the restrictive controls. These were very, very important measures for us. Backup is something which we focused a lot. We ensure that we have a right backup solution, and we have a governance program across all the backup requirements for the firm, ensuring that other security control like encrypting or the regulations that is coming for the data privacy acts and all, we ensure that we run a program and capture all these points together and to stitch that into our data governance program, putting up a stringent endpoint security control like ATPs and other security, which will help us to protect from other threats, from outside threats and all. We also focus a lot on the scanning and vulnerability management to ensure that all, at least the internet-facing applications and all, they are secure and we are able to protect our data. So I think that that's a small effort that we took, and then there's a dedicated team who is So it's structured to manage all these requirements to ensure that we are meeting the expectation of business. We are not stopping them from having through any interruption. We are also securing the data, and that because that's a most precious piece for any of the firm. So these are the
Thank
program
you.
that we are driving in the firm.
By no means it's small. We've nothing small. I'm sure it's a
Yes.
hard task. As you
Yeah.
said, data governance, third parties, policies, and then stitching it all together and ensuring business runs. So well done, Ruby. I think you're doing a great job, especially all client data, important data is on your shoulders, and I'm sure you've done great work there. Let me move to my friend Pawan. Pawan, different industry, more attacked, more sort of resilience, been there with stricter laws. How are you changing and governing for protecting the new oil data and the new threats?
Uh, yeah, most of the things have already been talked about, Shadab and Ruby, and I completely echo
Something new,
that.
Pawan. We can bank on you for something new.
So data is definitely a new fuel for the organization, and being in the insurance industry, we can't live without data. So data is something which is driving our business, and that's our bread and butter. Has to be taken care very, very selectively and very, very from a critical perspective. I would say it's very sensitive, which needs to be taken care. Now, we know that we deal with a lot of data, and every organization, like Ruby talked about, they have all kind of third-party data which they are dealing with. Similarly, the data which we carry is important, and especially with the work from home environment where we are in, we need to be very selective in providing access to the data. Hence, identity management plays a very important role. If that is not configured correctly, you may land up handing over certain data to the individual which may not require an access. The other important aspect which needs to be driven and have to be educated to all the employees is the understanding of the kind of data we are collecting and how it is being kept in the organization. So classification of the data is very important. If you do not classify the data correctly, it will create a separate problem for you. Some of the critical data can be classified as public and can get shared mistakenly. You can have controls by implementing, and similarly, we have done the same thing. We implemented DLP, we have information classification. The discovery plays a very important role because over a period of time, being in the industry for almost 10 to 12 years, there are a lot of data has been collected, and multiple copies of that particular data has been created in the organization. We don't know where is it residing, and with the discovery is the only option through which you can look at it, that how many copies of that particular data is residing where, and take a corrective action accordingly. Another important piece which comes to my mind, and that I am focusing upon right now, is understanding the user behavior, understanding the employees behavior, what they are doing today while they are sitting on my laptop, which is provided by the organization, and what all websites they are accessing, what kind of data is residing on that particular machine. Now, it is, as a CISO, our responsibility to ensure that the data is encrypted, not having extra access on the machine, so to ensure that they cannot upload it onto external websites. There is a restriction in transferring the data on that from that particular machine. And another important aspect is to analyze the behavior, like I mentioned, of on the websites which they are accessing. Hence, EDR plays a very important role because it is helping us in analyzing the user behavior and collating the data and forming that where we need to focus upon. And then the last piece comes is the awareness which Shadab talked about. We need to move from a traditional training models to more selective and more realistic training analysis and simulations, which can actually, which users should be able to correlate in their real life environment. Because if you look at it, cyber attacks, they are almost similar to when an employee is working for you or they are sitting at home. A cyber attack can only be initiated with a user action, and until and unless you simulate it and pass that information to the employee in a right fashion, it may not be that effective. Hence, this is a transformation which has to be bring in, and we have been fortunately able to do that so far. Have been able to pass that message through real simulation, real examples, and then follow up training and giving them that where they went wrong and what corrective action they should have taken when they receive a particular email or there is simulation done on an attack in the environment. That would be my take, Burgess, on it.
Thank you, Pawan. Always good to rely on you to give a new perspective. How do, as simple as reclassifying the data, understanding the user behavior, and stitching it all together. Let me move on to Sudeep. Sudeep, you heard again the three CISOs giving a different perspective. First, you heard them giving the challenges, and then you heard them giving a potential solution. Although Ruby was saying it's a small task, it's multiple small tasks put together, and they make a Herculean task, as Pawan and Shadab rightly mentioned, from awareness to user behavior. You are the leading tech. You've done micro-segmentation, zero trust models. Almost all companies I know have adopted the Zscaler equipment and process monitoring. Tell us about your case studies. What are clients coming to you for, and how are you helping them?
So a couple of points. Thanks, Burgess, and thanks all the CISOs and panelists for the insights. So essentially, Zscaler, the basic foundation, the kind of thought was, how do you make internet and cloud a safe and enjoyable place to do business? Because see, in these times, you feel like, let's go back to the old days. Let's, kind of close all the windows, doors. Let's try to be as insular. Look at the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Look at supply chain attacks and everything, right? But unfortunately, digital business cannot be done that way. So, however we wish it or not, but we have to keep our doors and windows open. Employees, have to be kind of mobile. So many business partners have to start work with. So for us, what we think are a couple of points. One is, let's say, how do you provide simplicity? Because there are so many layers. It's like peeling the onion, right? For a cybersecurity controls. But how do you make it simple? Because if the control points are too many, and if a user session passes through so many different control points, gets evaluated everywhere, then you may have security, but you may not have the right user experience. And it's very important to marry both of them. Secondly, when users are kind of mobile, whether a user should follow a policy or policy should follow the user, right? So it should not matter. I mean, anybody consuming a IT application is a resource. The resource can be anywhere. And the point from where the kind of answers come, be it internet browsing, be it cloud SaaS, be it like, public cloud applications, PaaS, your own applications, your own data center, it's just another destination. So Zscaler's positioning is, whoever connects to anything, let us be the broker in the cloud. And why cloud? Because, look at global organizations, even look at organizations, let's say domestic ones, maybe the CEO, CFO has traveled to the US. Now, if they want to access applications, would you bring the traffic back to India, gateways? Again, experience would be, pathetic, right? And so how do you kind of, marry this thing, but with the objective of inspecting everything at cloud scale, at line rate, so that user experience is, front and center. Unless you inspect, you don't know what is good, what is bad, right? We have seen a explosion of threats in encrypted channels and everything. Like since Google started trolling and giving bad points to websites which were just on HTTP, everybody has put things behind, let's say SSL or TLS, right? So how do you do line rate kind of inspection of all packets at real time? How do you make all these security controls run in parallel and not in sequence, so that every engine can look at the packet only once and take a uniform verdict, whether to allow the traffic, block the traffic, quarantine the traffic, whatever the case may be, right? And the third point also we feel is, don't give unnecessary exposure of your applications, of your crown jewels and your data where it is not needed. See, most of the cases, unless it is your own public website or whatever, most of the users coming and accessing applications are known users. It could be employees, it could be your business partners or whatever. So I think what Ruby mentioned, like least privilege access, and connect users and devices only to application. Never put them onto the network of the company, right? That's where you see, people come in and then they can laterally propagate. So multiple points, but running this as a global cloud, our own cloud, running this at a line rate, always marrying good user experience with good security and making it simple and manageable. So that's where we kind of see the world going forward. Back to you, Burgess.
Thank you, Sudeep. Lots of important points. Important to marry user experience with security. Who should follow whom, policy or the user? Broker in the cloud. Just one more destination. Unless you inspect, you don't know what's good and bad. Don't give unnecessary exposure of your crown jewels. Connect users to the application directly, not to the network. Great points. Always, that is a nice point, but failure, and you learn best from failure. Can you tell me an example where a particular client had undergone a very painful journey, maybe got attacked, and how were you able to help them become more resilient? Sudeep?
Absolutely. See, I mean, we are not like a desktop software that you put it on and then it works just the way it intends, right? You have to configure it. You have to put your so you have your cybersecurity policies, and look, all the cybersecurity policies and controls were nothing like new. We talked about all of them in the past. Maybe it was a little bit of a paper exercise. Things like vendor security evaluation, things like how do I allow BYOD devices to access my applications. But now every one of them are being put to actual practical use, right? So you also got to be keep your foot on the pedal and always see that whatever technology you have put it in, have you implemented correctly? So we find missing gaps. Maybe certain sets of segments of users have been given kind of lenient controls. Or what we are seeing more and more with cloud usage is things like misconfigurations. You applied fantastic security on your data center and all which you knew and ran for like decades, but cloud is new to you. So probably you have put up servers, etc., which you have not configured well, and they have some kind of ports open to the internet, etc. And everything is connected in this highly networked world, and the attack can come from anywhere, right? So we see that there are still challenges in implementation, challenges in understanding. Maybe the CISO ecosystem is thinking in one way, but the network infra, the ISG, they're working in a separate way. SOC is working in a third way. A lot of them is anyway outsourced because there's not enough talent to hire and build large teams. So I see things falling through the cracks. The intent is good, but the implementation sometimes is a little iffy.
I like this. Intent is good, implementation is iffy. Keep your foot on the pedal and secure new tech. And everything is connected. Thank you so much. I can see Ruby smiling. Ruby, you just epitomize how tough your job is. Thank you so much, Sudeep, for giving real life experiences and how you help clients, and clearly lots of learnings and pearls of wisdom. I'll move on to the next level. We discuss the challenges, we discuss the new tech. A common underlining factor for all of this is cloud. And I'll start this time with Pawan. Pawan, with the journeys on the cloud, everyone trying to go in a hurry. How do you think are CISO's biggest challenges to secure the cloud, to first understand the cloud, secure a cloud, a multi-hybrid cloud? Tell us about your journey and what you learned from other CISOs from a cloud security perspective. Pawan?
Yeah, hi, Bhagat. Sorry, there was internet disturbance in between.
Should I repeat the question?
Cloud, yeah, please, if you could.
Okay, so I was saying with all CISOs mentioned about the journeys, the common stitching it together, but cloud is the common influencer for all of that. So tell me about your journey and other CISO's journey on how do you secure a cloud, a hybrid cloud, and what's the learning which you'd like to give to other CISOs for cloud security?
Very interesting and a complex question as well, because there is no straight way to implement security on cloud. It needs to be taken up as and when you move ahead and put a particular solution onto the cloud. Need to be considered all the aspects which need to be looked at, right from defining the right architecture for your cloud infrastructure and then implementing security controls on top of it. At every step, it's a new learning and new implementation which needs to be undertaken, because all the baselining will goes for a toss when you implement something which has never been implemented in an organization. So the most important point here, I always recommend, and that I have followed, is baselining something which is important as per the NIST guideline of a specific technology which needs to be implemented. CIS benchmarking which needs to be implemented. Considering the aspect that at least it gives you a fair idea of what should be there, and taking a step forward to what is required by the organization and then implement it. The second important thing, because when you move application onto the cloud, it requires integration with multiple APIs, your supply chain vendors, and to run the business. So that those are the focus areas for any CISO and the CIO. Before it is put in the production, always conduct a vulnerability assessment of those APIs and ensure that there are no bugs which are there. And then put a continuous assessment mechanism in place so that there are whenever there is a change happen, or after a periodic period, there is a continuous assessment happens of those APIs, including the application which has been hosted online. The reason being because the threats are changing. The hackers are much more advanced. We definitely, as a CISO, can't catch up that pace, and it has to be a continuous and incremental process which has to be adopted. Uh, uh, Third thing is putting the security gates within the implementation stage itself. When I say security gates, it's the assessment to be done internally before putting anything into production or for your customer on a public environment. There are two security gates I always recommend, one at a UAT stage and one before putting up any application onto production in the cloud environment. That has to be taken care. The last piece is if you have developed it or whether your vendor has developed it, is always do a source code review of the application using tools, or have put a manual process in place so that whenever if there are known bugs, at least they have been tested at the time of development itself, rather than realizing it later that there are bugs which could have been taken care at an earlier stage itself. So early identification plays a very important role here, and hence that has to be embedded in the SDLC cycle itself. That would be my take, Varghese, on this particular.
Thank you, Pawan. Shraddha, would you like to add to what Pawan mentioned? APIs check, continuous incremental process.
Yes, again, so slightly different point of take from Pawan, because we are the ones who are born and brought up in cloud. So for us, cloud is the way we treat cloud is way different than like organizations who are adapting to cloud, right? For us, it's more about workload protection in the cloud. It's more about the Kubernetes securities in the cloud. It's more about how do we ensure AWS benchmark. Again, that would be a more realistic standard for us to follow rather than the CIS benchmark. Again, everyone has a right to follow what. So again, the challenges would be very different, because for Pawan, after doing all of this, he would have to come to workload protection. So for us, we are slightly ahead in those directions. But yes, those are critical concerns that exist, right? So yes, like security mesh is something that we have to take care of, right? In cloud, in multi-cloud, how would you take care of your secrets, right? How would you have Vault talking to all your clouds, right? So those would be the aspects that needs to be taken care. Again, it depends on the organization, their journey on the cloud. That would differ. So there's no right answer here, but yeah, it would be very different from what others would have.
Thank you, Shraddha. Clearly, your journey, you born the cloud provider, so for you, much more risk taking, more security mesh, and how do you make your Vault talk to the keys? Maybe we'll have a question on how do you manage the keys from when Prasun comes inside. You know, do you leave it to the native to the key management, or you bring your own keys? We can talk about that more. Ruby, from your perspective, from the cloud journey, you advise people on clouds. I'm sure you'll adopt it first, but how do you secure it for yourself?
While I totally agree with what Pawan and Shadab said, but cloud is already there. It's not a future, it's a present now. For us, yes, it was difficult. For any CISO, it is actually difficult because we have to understand the technology in order to put up the controls. So that's a journey which Pawan rightly said, that the dilemma which CISO is going through is to understanding each and every technology and then putting up a layer of security, something which is a challenge for all of us. Managing all the hybrid cloud solution is something which is again a problem. While we start taking care of one instance, there are the other instances which are coming together. So that's a challenge, but there's a future, that's a present, and we have to take that forward. So we have been doing a lot for the cloud thing. First thing is, for any technology aspect, we need to understand the importance of the technology and why it needs to be there. To support the business, obviously, we need to have to manage the multiple stakeholders. Every second business unit is coming and saying that they need to have a platform over cloud because of the scalability requirements that they need to give it to the client. So we are putting up all these efforts, putting a governance program, talking to a lot of our partners. For example, we have also spoken to Zscaler. They are our partner, a lot of other partners, talking to them, understanding from them what best can be done to integrate all these requirements together, stitches, so that we have a common visibility of all these environment, ensuring that these critical workloads are protected. It's that any control that we were putting up, the funda is very clear. Any control that we are putting up today on the on-prem has to go on the cloud. None of the piece can be ignored if it is a vulnerability management, identity and access management, your security approach of doing a continuous scanning, vulnerability management, patching, everything has to go. But the problem is how we ensure that this is going in one go. So that is something that we have been working a lot. And uh, the other challenge which I see today is putting up the right skill sets. So all of a sudden there was a massive requirement of cloud team coming into the pictures and all. So bringing the right skill sets to manage this workload was also very, very critical. So I think we are still working hard in bringing all this together. I would not say we have been matured. It's a continuous journey, and we have to bring this improvement into each of the steps. So I think that's even our partners. So 2 years back, the solution that they were providing versus today, what they are coming up with have been improved a lot. So I think that's a continuous journey of learning and then putting up all your experiences together to ensure that you are doing justice to what you have been hired for. So that's the approach we are taking here also in KPMG.
Thank you. Again, I like the humility. You say you're not mature. I'm sure you're more mature than many other companies. But thank you for that. Let me move to now Prakash. Prakash, again, you had CISOs right from the start talking about challenges, what they're doing. We've had partners mentioning, and now the cloud journey. And from Checkpoint perspective, you help secure the cloud, secure our companies, our data. Talk to us about your cloud journey security and how do you help clients in a case study if you can.
Sure, Burgess. First and foremost, it's great to be part of this eminent panel, and thank you for having us here. And with that said, see, the Checkpoint has been a leader in security. I think it does not need to be told that we've been here for almost nearly 3 decades now. And our cloud journey started almost like half a decade ago, where we started investing in products and building a cloud native security, what we call as Cloud Guard. Okay. Now, why this is important is because we recognize that businesses today cannot avoid being in a multi-cloud environment. And as Sudip mentioned, you need to look at solutions which simplify your life, not only in terms of deployment, but also in terms of operations and also ensuring your security posture. So with this in mind, we built a product which is not only securing your traffic, which is ingressing and egressing out of the cloud, but also monitoring your workload and runtime. At the same time, also looking at east-west traffic happening between applications, because incorrect privileges, bad configurations, or incorrect configurations can lead to catastrophes, which could compromise your security in a very, very big way. So recognizing this, we've built in all the tools into the product. Now, there are some challenges which are inherent in cloud. I think many of the CISOs pointed this out. When you start adopting cloud, once the settling period starts in, then your expansion on cloud is very, very fast. Now, how do I keep my operational speed at the same level as what my business wants in terms of rolling out new applications and services? At the same time, I would also like to make sure my development cycle is not getting impacted. So again, to some of the points that was mentioned, keep it simple, do not introduce too many obstacles, but at the same time, do not compromise on security. The third is the most important thing. And with that in mind, we come with a prevention first strategy, because today's threats that you see in the cloud cannot be just based on detection alone. So you need to have sophisticated tools to kind of detect these as and when things happen in near real time. How is it possible today? I think we leverage heavily on AI and ML technologies and on automation to go with that, right? So using this, you're able to kind of continuously monitor different workloads, serverless functions, containers, whatever be it, in the cloud environment, who is talking to whom, and so on and so forth, and be able to enforce policies in near real time without any human intervention. And this is done through a high degree of automation. And thereby, we also allow integration through APIs with third-party products to customers to leverage on their investments that are making from a security suite of products. Last but not least, I think the challenge also remains, how do I make my deployment on cloud very secure? And this is where the shift left strategy comes in, right? The developers work at a very rapid pace when it comes to cloud deployment. Now you want to kind of move your security posture all the way right to the development cycle. And that is where we have tools like DevSecOps, which kind of you can follow a practice to bring in security right at the beginning of your application. Now combined together, all of this tool sets provide you an ability to kind of ensure that you're staying compliant based on your industry standards, at the same time getting you the right level of visibility in terms of providing you the highest level of security and making sure that you're compliant. And last but not least, giving you the confidence to go cloud in a very big way with the kind of security that you could look for.
Thank you. Again, if you can give us an example where a client had suffered and you helped them with a sort of panacea and how they help recover, that would be good as a learning for all of us.
Great. I think that's a very interesting point you mentioned that, because many of the clients get onto cloud and then they realize that, look, did I choose the right product? Because choosing the right product which meets your requirement also is very, very fundamental, because once you get on cloud, you start to scale very fast. And before you know it, you have an environment or an infrastructure which is fairly difficult to control, right? So we have seen many cases where we, as trusted advisors in cybersecurity, we talk to customers well beforehand and tell them what are the things to watch out for and to look for. And particularly around multi-cloud environments, if I were to take an example, customers realized that operationally their teams were siloed. There was a team which was managing Google Cloud, another one was Azure, and third one probably for another different cloud platform such as AWS or whatever, right? Now, when enforcing policies across all of these, you have three different teams interpreting those policies. And this is a great situation which we are creating internally for things to go wrong, because nobody is monitoring whether it's been applied consistently. So which is where the tools such as we use, which leverages on infrastructure as code or even be able to write policies as code, ensures that your policies are applied in a unified manner across these different cloud environments, thereby giving you watertight security that you anticipate from your policies across different environments, be it on hybrid, private, or public clouds.
Thank you. As you rightly mentioned, that people go on the cloud journey and then realize how tough it is, and then they sort of try and make correction. But love the example what you mentioned. All right. Thanks again, Prakash, for your lovely comments. We come to the final section. We've had the changes that are happening. It's a dynamic world. What we're doing, clouds underlining, but the truth and reality is attacks still happen. And Shadab, back to you. How do you prepare for attacks? How do you do simulations? How do you ensure ransomware won't disrupt your company? You're born in the cloud. How do you ensure it is protected? Give us about details. And I'm sure Pawan got enthusiastic. Pawan, you can also go next. You can speak about your preparation journey, your advice to the world to see things will be best in place, but you may still get attacked. How do you prepare for the worst?
Sure. For me, it's not about, hey, I have to be ready. The point is, can we just plan for the unknowns, right? We don't know what would be unknowns be, right? So for me, it's more about, can we build detection in place? Could we, as an analogy, put up landmines, right? Ideally, they should never blow up. But if anything ever blows up, we know there's something wrong. Let's figure out that later, but okay, there's something wrong that's happening, right? Now, the whole aim is, how can we go about just setting up these landmines all across the place, right? Which could be as simple as, I'll just take a very layman example of, hey, we should not have a phone number of 11 digits, right? Now, I know this is a lame example, but the point is, hey, we have all the checks in place, yes. But if there is something that you don't know of, ideally, you would never get an alert. But if it blows off that, hey, Pawan signed up with an 11-digit phone number, there's something wrong that Pawan has figured out, right? And now if you go to cloud and build all these kind of things, right? If something of this is happening for us, me and my team has done a tremendous job of building these alerts where anything that's something fishy happening, we get to know, right? And it goes to I would say sort of a confidence score, right? Like if it's the confidence score is 5, someone has to look at it real time, right? Versus a 1, we know there's a chance of false positive in it, right? So for me, I don't know what would attack me first. The point is, could I be alerted in real time there's something wrong happening? If I could do that, I think that would be far more better for us to do things, secure us, right? At the same time, for ransomware and things, we have deployed for endpoint security. We have done a lot of things from deploying a couple of solutions in terms of behavior analytics monitoring. All of those things is something that we are doing to understand how we could detect anything that can go wrong better as well. So it has to be a mix of the traditional and the new way approach that has to go through. Yep.
Sorry, I had to having difficulty with my unmute button. Thank you. It has to be combination of the new and way. Pawan, I could see you were enthusiastic. Tell me about your journey of preparing for an attack.
See, always getting prepared for unknown is the most difficult thing you can do. Today, we are living in a world where you can hire a ransomware, you can buy a ransomware at a $40, and you can hire a ransomware specialist at a cost of $10 per hour, which can plant a ransomware in a particular organization and make an impactful impact, a disastrous impact in an organization. So that's the world we are living in. Getting prepared for that is something which we can think of, but we will never be able to achieve. Like I mentioned earlier, that hackers have enough money and time. Unfortunately, CISOs don't get that kind of a budgeting and that kind of time they have where they can be prepared for the unknowns. And that's a realistic world we are living in, and something which we can be aware of and can do to protect the organization is something is we need to focus upon. As mentioned earlier, the training has to be realistic. Most importantly, when we say realistic training, it has to have real simulation, and it should so that the user should be able to correlate in case they fall into a trap of it or they face similar scenario, what they need to work upon and what action do they need to take, whether to click, whether not to click, whether to report a particular cyber attack or a phishing email is something which needs to be taught through. And that's where we are focusing right now. And that's the primary focus area, because until unless we know what is happening, you can't have monitoring done all the time. There may be slippages which will happen. You can have best-in-class SOC in place, but still the slippages will happen if there is a wrong click done by an employee. Similarly, when we talked about monitoring of the network, I take it as this is my personal view. SOC is traditional now because we have seen there is a lot of false positive that gets generated. You need to have some automation in place and have to put have to bring SOAR into action so that on certain aspects a corrective action taken at a point when it is first identified, at least, or quarantine a particular network, subnet, or a device until unless you investigate and mitigate that particular risk before putting it back into the production. The third aspect which I talked about is the endpoint behavior analysis, which Shadab also talked about, is very important and need to be looked at. I talked about XDR has to be in place, which can help you in analyzing what is happening in a particular machine, because now your parameter has changed. It is no more network; it is more of a laptop or a desktop which a user is using. So you need to know what is going on in that particular machine, and you need to have real analytics of that. And along with that, you need to have managed services, which is called MDR, managed detection and response service, because that will help you out in nailing it down and removing the false positive and give you a correct picture of the action what you need to take at a particular scenario. And those are the things needs to be focused upon in order to stay protected and be prepared for future attacks.
Thank you. And Ruby, your vision on how do you prepare with simulations and war games and scenarios? Shadab mentioned landmines and deception. Pawan mentioned awareness. What's your preparation journey?
So for us, we always believe that incident management program is something that has to be very smart and well. I would not say that SOPs and all would be a traditional. It always helps out. Also, we rely a lot on the technology aspects. For example, if my EDR solutions, they are capable enough of detecting something and then isolating them. For example, it's an endpoint. So while we get an alert, the team will act onto it. Is my solution smart enough to isolate that machine? So maybe there can be a business disruption, but at least we are saving the entire from a big incident. So I think these are small steps that we always take to ensure that we are managing the entire alerts properly. Also, simulation and testing is something which always help. While we keep sending a lot of information or awareness programs for the employee, are they actually applying that too? You send an email and just see the click that happens on that email. So I think those sort of simulation and testing, red teaming sort of thing is very, very important for us to know what exactly is the posture of the firm. we think that, okay, we have implemented this control, we have sent enough of awareness mailers, or we have trained our people and everything is sorted. It's not that way. We need to have a right visibility in terms of how effectively we are able to manage the incident when it is actually there. So it is parallelly important that the team has to be trained on, your solution has to be trained on, so that this acts parallelly whenever there is any sort of triggering happen in the firm. So I think we are focusing on a lot these sort of simulations, red teaming, scannings and all. We completely say that it is very, very important. So we keep getting alerts from various agencies. It is important for us to go back and see whether we are vulnerable to these alerts or not. So incident management, patching, these are all parallelly built up so that we ensure that we are taking all right steps to mitigate such risks.
Thanks, Alka. Incident management, walkthroughs, simulations, red teaming, and ensuring the right alerts for you. Let me move to Prasoon. Prasoon, from your perspective as a partner helping companies stay secure, especially from a cloud journey, simulations, bring your own key solutions. How do you ensure clients remain secure? And give us your war stories, your case studies.
Great. So first of all, thank you for having me here, Burgess, and thank you for everybody sharing their opinion. All the CISOs here. So one of the advantages of going in last is you have heard it all by now. So I would like to.
But still expect to give a new point of view.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Sure. So I'll hope to meet your expectations. So first of all, let me give you a brief introduction about our organization. So Thales as an organization is responsible for providing security all over the world in various sectors such as aerospace, defense, and others. And we in Thales CPL, which is Cloud Protection and Licensing, operate in a business unit that helps almost over 30,000 organizations now in regulated industries to protect their valuable sensitive data, both on-premise and on the cloud. Actually, it was mostly on-premise earlier before the cloud journey really began to accelerate. So, as we have all noticed, the intent from all organizations all across the world is to accelerate their migration to the cloud. However, more often than not, we have seen that most of these organizations face, serious data privacy and compliance barriers in this process, especially related to some of their sensitive, valuable, regulated data. Now, and what we see is that it usually revolves around solving the complexities of taking charge of your own sensitive data and identity on the cloud. So organizations that usually do that and have a good digital sovereignty program find it easier to migrate all their sensitive workloads to the cloud. Now, digital sovereignty, we have broken down into three separate components, and the answer to your question would probably lie somewhere in there. So one is data sovereignty, which essentially boils down to the ability to ensure that all the sensitive data and identities do not fall into the hands of a foreign state without your explicit permission. And that is a huge risk in today's world, at least all over the world, especially from the Subpoena Act, the Patriot Act coming into play. Then there is operational sovereignty, which means that bad actors or malicious processes, could not access or, equally importantly, prevent you from accessing your valuable data. So that's something that should not happen. Then there is software sovereignty, which means that it's essentially you'd have the ability to store and run your workload wherever you want, so that you can maximize both choice and resilience, right, at the end of the day. So what we have noticed is that the crux of digital sovereignty lies in the management of keys, essentially. So it's been well known, in fact, it's been well known now for centuries that encryption is one of the most effective way to protect your sensitive data and identity on anywhere, on-premise, on the cloud, anywhere. And taking ownership and controlling these encryption keys within your own organization is very important to ensure your own sovereignty on the cloud. Now, when it comes to cyber attacks and fear of the unknown, it is this same technology encryption that organizations have relied on, always, because this essentially forms as the plan B. So as everybody has voiced out, cyber attacks, cannot be predicted. There is always a way that your platform, that your products, that your software stack, API gateway, anything that you are using could have potential of being introduced with malicious software code or being taken advantage of in some way or the other. Now, one of the most effective techniques that most organizations feel is that already preempt that and assume that would happen, and have an effective encryption technology in place and control your encryption keys within your own organization with your own sovereign identities, so that even if this data gets shipped off or hacked or whatever, nobody can access and have control or have use of that data. So we, in partnership with Microsoft, have the ability to provide such solutions on Azure platform that can act as a catalyst for any of your cloud migration projects, or and we resolve such concerns with those solutions, and we ensure data and identity privacy by design is factored whenever you embark on your own cloud project. Thank you. Thank you very much.
How do you ensure data and privacy by design is met? Bring your own keys. How do you ensure data is secured even if the cloud provider gets compromised? Your life, your data, your keys are in your custody. Thank you. Yes, you did exceed expectations by giving a very different flavor, very technical, but very persistent and very pertinent from the perspective. So thank you very much. We started from new trends, new designs, new case studies, how our CISOs gearing up. Ruby mentioned her journey. Shadab, you mentioned how sort of you're born in the cloud. Pawan, how you mentioned on the data is important from an insurance perspective. From there, we had our 4 partners, James, Sudeep, Prakash, and Prasun, who mentioned lovely case studies, how they learn from failures, to the cloud journey and to how to prepare for the attacks, and each person's security, inputs and secure in their own company. Ruby, again, you may mention small steps, but all small steps put together make a large Herculean task, which all CISOs do and all partners support. With that, we come to an end to our lovely discussion. Thank you so much, fellow CISOs and fellow partners. Much appreciate your inputs and your learnings to the industry. Thank you. God bless. Good. Stay well.
Thank you. Thank you, Burgess. Take care. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Burgess.
Thank you so much, Burgess, for wonderfully steering that discussion. There has been a great exchange of thoughts and we've had some valuable takeaways. A big thank you to every one of our panelists for their valuable time, contributions, and inputs. Thank you once again for joining the Economic Times CXO Connect series powered by Microsoft. Looking forward to seeing you all at our upcoming sessions. This is your host, Deepti Diwan, signing off. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you. Bye. Stay well.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.